G'day from Montreal, the day after the Canadian Grand Prix, which had many pros and cons, and I'll run through them in just a moment. Well, we were blessed with a great race, weren't we, yesterday? Plenty of drama going on throughout that race. Certainly the rain was a major contributor to that drama. I can tell you right now, it was very uncomfortable photographing that race. Look at what we had to walk through here, 3 and 4 inches deep of dirty mud. But that's not your worry. I want to go back to the start of the day. Umbrellas were the order of the day, with Carlos and Rebecca, his girlfriend, walking across the bridge. This was a funny moment because the pair got halfway towards us, and there would have been a dozen photographers shooting it. And then Carlos, with his zany sense of humour, has dropped the brolly. And for a few seconds, a TV cameraman to my left was going crazy, shouting at him, "Put it up, put it out." I thought it was a bit of good fun. George Russell also had a large umbrella as he walked into the track on his own. Pierre Gasly, he was not carrying an umbrella. He didn't need one. He'd rode his scooter into the track, and as such, he still had his helmet on and his visor down, so no need for an umbrella for the Frenchman. And were the fans allowed to bring umbrellas? I'm told no, by a number of people who were ropeable. And I'm going to go through a couple of these negatives now, because whilst the majority of the stuff was positive, these things need to be brought up. Well, the short story is umbrellas are just not allowed into the track if you're a spectator. Now, somebody said, why can't we just have them up during the off-track sessions, put them down when the cars are on track? Fair point, but no umbrellas allowed. Now let's have a look at this video that I received this morning via social media. Now let me tell you the story here. Many of these people came in when the gates opened. So they'd been sitting prior to the race for, I'm guessing, 6 hours in the rain, which wasn't too bad on Sunday, but they were on the start-finishing line. They were probably going to get a pretty good view of what was happening in front of them. They were general admission ticket holders. It's still an expensive buy, but it's not a grandstand seat. But an hour prior to the race, authorities come along and put up this black mesh over the wire fence. So those people went from having a great view to having no view. So they then had to go and find somewhere else to watch, or try and peer through that black mesh, which is not even worth doing. Now they've been sitting there for hours on race day, plus the 2 previous days, and then the last minute, they just punched in the face. I can understand their anger, as I can understand those people who were caught on the bridge on Friday when they were told by police that they had to turn and go home because FP1 and FP2 had been cancelled. I did a separate video on that, and I spoke to Jacques Villeneuve. He was one of those people standing in that huge line for 75 minutes through rain and hail, and he didn't accept what he was being told because he was getting information from inside the track. He wasn't allowed in, but he waited for 75 minutes, and then suddenly the gates were opened. People out on that bridge were saying there was no communication. The staff that were there clearly weren't trained on how to handle this sort of thing. They were teenagers, spoke only one language, and in the end this has done a lot of damage for this race, and certainly the promoter has a lot of work to do before next year to solve those problems. Let's talk about the wet race. First lap, driving through puddles at turn 2. I couldn't believe it when I saw this water splash up. It was like they were driving through a supermarket car park. A few laps into the race, I noticed that they'd already carved out a dry line, but have a look here. You can still see water in the middle of that dry line, obviously where no tyres are getting to. And on the exit of turn 2, which all the cars took very gingerly, nobody was particularly gung-ho about that. Everybody was fishtailing. This was one of the more spectacular efforts on Nico Hülkenberg's part. And Pierre Gasly, I caught him coming out of pit lane, but obviously he's on new tyres, not up to speed, and he's actually put the back left off into the grass. I was at that spot too when Lando Norris rejoined after his pit stop, and I was thrilled to be there because I knew that this was going to be a pivotal moment in the race. Would he come back on in front of Max? Well, he did, as you can see here. But he was out on the wet part of the track with colder tyres, and he just couldn't get the power down, handed the race lead back to Max. I shot the start from the inside of the track up on the photo tower. Then I went across the track and went around to turn 3. And I was photographing these cars here coming around the right-hander. Then I noticed the yellow flags are out, so I'm thinking, what's going on? I ring my son back in the media centre. He's doing editing mid-race. And I say, where's this accident? Obviously there's something's happened. He goes, it's Logan, and he's off, but I can't tell which corner because he'd not actually been around the track to work out where that incident was. So I'm trying to work out here, looking at all sorts of stuff on the internet, and then a marshal comes over and taps me on the shoulder and points, and in French says, get around there, there's a driver. So I take off with my stuff, and I find Logan Sargeant, who's had the misfortune of coming off at the exit of turn 4. He's sitting there, obviously forlorn, so I take a number of pics. And then I go to take a pic of the car, and I see Logan get up. And you might have remembered in my video last week I mentioned that the drivers at this track have to walk a section around the outside before they can be couriered back to the paddock on the back of a scooter. So I figure, right, he's going to walk through that scrub, and I've always wanted a photo like this one of Sergio Perez some years ago, but I was actually behind Logan. I'm thinking, how do I get past him? It's very narrow, and I don't want to appear to be rude. And I know he's not going to be very happy because he's come off, but there was one point where that track through the bush widened to about 1 metre, so I snuck around him there and got in front. But eventually he met up with the scooter, and he was ferried back to the garage. Earlier in the race, actually, I was photographing this Ferrari coming around turn 2 from the inside, and then from my left I see a car, which turns out to be Logan, coming across. He's obviously taken the shortcut, and I can't remember that happening to me very often, but it certainly surprised me at the time. Now, I like Logan. I think he's a great guy. Certainly sad for him on Sunday, but I'm also sad for the fact that he's going to be out at the end of this year. That's pretty much a given. You can hear James Vowles talk at length about wooing Carlos Sainz to the team, and I think that is a deal that's almost done. And I've mentioned that in a past video. So let's wait and see. I think within a couple of weeks we'll get confirmation of that. If not, I've got egg on my face. On the subject of drivers without contracts next year, Jacques Villeneuve certainly hit a nerve with his comments about Daniel Ricciardo, saying, why is he even in the sport? Now, a lot of you thought that was unfair. Probably as many thought it was fair. And as you probably know, Yuki Tsunoda has his contract already confirmed for next year, and we're just waiting on news about what will happen with Daniel. If he doesn't get that drive at V-Carb, I'm not sure there's anything else left for him, is there? He may turn to the media, he could go to IndyCar, might even go to NASCAR. But a lot of you will be very unhappy if he does leave, as I will be too. I think he's great for the sport. Let's go now to post-race, and I was down at Parc Ferme shooting Max Verstappen, celebrating his win, which, as we all agree, was probably a little bit lucky. Probably as lucky as Lando's win was in Monaco because of that safety car incident. Now, a number of you actually sent me comments, hey, they're drinking from Red Bull cans with the labels off. Well, I did some research. That is just water. What happens in Parc Ferme, for those of you not in the know, no sponsors can be seen on drinking vessels. So even the water that comes out, and it's normally out in bottles like these ones here, have all the labels removed. So at some point I imagine that the promoter or F1 has got hold of water cans that have no logos on them. Did you see the Pirelli caps? I thought they were lovely. Normally they're black with yellow, but this time we had white with some red maple leaves on the brim. Thought that was a nice touch. Now, as you know, I'm a bit of a watchman, and it's not often I get sent watches, but I have been sent this from Panzera. It's a chronograph, so you can use it to time things, and down to 1/10 of a second. Beautiful feel to it. The rubber band can easily be replaced with other bands. And in terms of watches, it's right up there. But get this, they sent me another one to give away to perhaps you. This is the TM43. It comes with this metal band, but they've also sent me some leather bands. Now, to be in the running to win this, all you need to do is click on the link in the description below, take a look at Panzera's range of watches on their site, and then simply leave a comment under this video about which is your favourite watch. And on Tuesday, June 18 at 5 PM Perth time in Western Australia, I'm going to leave a comment under the winner's comment. The winner will then have 48 hours to contact me, and if they don't, well, I'll find another winner. If you see any comment under your comment prior to that date, it's a scammer. Don't respond. Let's go back post-race and have a look at the crowd on the track. This was magnificent. Are you in there? Can you see yourself? There was one downside of this, though. The organiser is now in a heap of trouble because they let people onto the track before the cars had finished their cool-down lap. That is a real safety concern, and you might remember that Australia did something similar in 2023, and as a result, this year, 2024, nobody was allowed on track. Yesterday, the organiser was summoned to a steward's inquiry, and they now have to come back to the FIA before the end of September, I think it is, with what they're going to do to beef that situation up next year. But there's certainly a chance that the FIA could say, nope, no more track invasions for Canada for a period of time. I was having a chat with the Mercedes garage crew yesterday. One of them is actually this fella here, and I was mucking around with my f1.0 lens, and I quite like that portrait. But that aside, they were telling me that all of their stuff was packed up last night in the garage, and the stuff that doesn't go by air is sent by sea. That goes direct to Austin, and then it goes to Las Vegas afterwards, and after that, they store it in the US for Miami next year. And all the teams have this rotating leapfrogging of garage equipment. Wags, yes, wives and girlfriends. We had, late in the day, I saw Daniel's girlfriend, Heidi Berger, wearing sunnies. I had to look twice before I recognised her. And Tiffany Cromwell came in with Valtteri Bottas. And that was a funny thing, because you walk across this pontoon bridge, and it was quite choppy on that water in the morning. And as such, people were rocking and rolling as they came across. And I actually caught her holding the umbrella for Valtteri going to the garage for the race, something I don't often see. It was Lance Stroll's home race, and he was supporting a sponsor, Tim Hortons, which is a Canadian brand. In fact, they'll have a lot of Tim Hortons, I imagine, here in Montreal. And he had a Tim Hortons cup of coffee. Black with 1 sugar is apparently how he takes his coffee. Was that just for product placement, or did he need a drink? I think it was more product placement. He's not the only driver to do that. I've seen Lewis Hamilton plugging his drink by carrying it with him down the paddock. Last year in Mexico, I remember, and there was another occasion this year. We're about a year away from the next Canadian Grand Prix, but I do think the organisers have a fair amount of work to do to win back the confidence of this crowd. You sitting at home, you have not been inconvenienced, it doesn't matter. But for the 300,000 to 400,000 people that I imagine were here at this race over the 4 days, they need to be won back. But before you go, please subscribe if you haven't done so, like the video and become a member, and yes, go and click on that link and see if you are the proud owner of this, which one? I've got 2 in my pocket, TM43 from Panzera. Thanks for watching, and stay passionate. And they send it to different places throughout the year, and they send it to different places, and they send it to different tracks, and they send it to different, and they send it to tracks, and they send it, and they send it, and they send that, I don't know what to say. Oh, fuck.